For years, she thought she would only be happy when she could change everything. Her body, her hair, her way of being. But the real change happened in the one place she never imagined, inside herself. This is the story of a woman who spent her life trying to fit in, until she realized she was made to overflow. And if you've ever felt outside the norm, this story is for you. Stay until the end, because maybe it's yours too. I was 13 when I realized I didn't fit in. It wasn't a sudden realization. It crept in slowly, like a fog settling in. One day, I overheard my aunt whispering to my mother, "She has such a pretty face, but she needs to lose some weight." Another day, a classmate handed me a note during math class. Fatty. I laughed it off, but that word clung to me. At home, my mother was always on a diet. She'd prepare separate meals for herself, drink green juices, and weigh herself every morning. I watched her, wondering if I should start doing the same. In front of the mirror, I began to scrutinize myself. My thighs were too thick, my arms too flabby, my stomach not flat enough. I started wearing baggy clothes to hide my body. I avoided swimming classes and parties. I became invisible. High school didn't help. The popular girls were slim, wore makeup, and had boyfriends. I tried to emulate them, but it felt like wearing a costume that didn't fit. One day during gym class, we had to pair up for a dance routine. No one wanted to be my partner. I stood there, pretending not to care, but inside I was crumbling. That night, I cried in the shower, letting the water mask my sobs. I wished I could change everything about myself, but I didn't know how. By the time I turned 18, I had become a master at pretending. I smiled at the right times. I laughed at the jokes. I nodded during conversations, even when I felt like screaming inside. I had learned to fake confidence because the world didn't like insecure women, especially not insecure, chubby ones. At college, things didn't get any better. I lived in a dorm with 3 other girls who were obsessed with calorie counting and gym selfies. Every morning, they'd line up in front of the mirror, adjusting tight jeans, discussing contouring, and comparing bodies. I avoided the mirror. I focused on my studies. I was a good student, quiet and responsible. Professors liked me. I told myself that mattered more than looks. But deep down, I still believed I'd never be loved the way those other girls were. Not until I lost weight. Not until I changed. And then came Daniel. He was charming, funny, a senior in the marketing program. He noticed me during a group project, complimented my ideas, and slowly, we became friends. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked. For the first time, I let someone see the real me, or so I thought. We started dating. Secretly. He never introduced me to his friends. We never took photos together. When I asked about it, he'd say, "You know how people are. I just want to keep what we have private." I believed him, until the night I found out he was dating someone else, publicly. A girl from his social circle, thin, blonde, always perfectly dressed. Their photos were everywhere. Him holding her, smiling, proud. When I confronted him, his words shattered me. "You're great, but you're not exactly what I imagined being seen with, you know. You're smart, but you're not my type." That sentence broke something inside me. I didn't cry. Not immediately. I walked away, holding my breath like if I exhaled, everything inside would come pouring out. I locked myself in my room, curled into a ball, and felt the weight of every insult, every rejection, every mirror that had ever lied to me. For weeks, I barely left my room. I skipped classes, ignored messages. I was drowning in shame and self-hatred. I believed every cruel thing anyone had ever said about me. I wasn't enough. Not pretty enough. not thin enough, not lovable enough. I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something bigger, the breaking point, before the breakthrough. I don't remember much from that phase, just that I stopped existing. I would wake up, stare at the ceiling, and wonder what the point of it all was. I didn't even have the energy to pretend anymore. The mirrors in my room were covered. My phone stayed off. Food didn't taste like anything. Music became noise. I didn't want to be seen. I felt like a shadow, moving, breathing, but not really living. One day, my mother came to visit me at the dorm. I hadn't told her what had happened, but she took one look at me and knew. She sat on the bed, held my hand, and whispered, "You don't have to go through this alone." I broke down in her arms. It was the first time I had cried in front of someone in years. After that day, she insisted I go home with her. I resisted. I didn't want to admit I needed help. I thought accepting help meant I was weak. But honestly, I was too tired to fight. Back at home, my old room felt different, smaller, heavier. My reflection, still hidden behind a towel draped over the mirror, waited silently. A week later, I agreed to see a therapist. At first, I said very little. I kept my arms crossed. I answered everything with "I don't know." But she didn't push. She just listened, gently, without judgment. And slowly, session by session, the words started to come. I talked about Daniel, about how I had let his validation define my worth. I talked about high school, about the note that called me fat. I talked about all the times I had looked in the mirror and hated what I saw. She asked me something that stuck with me. "When did you decide that your body was the enemy?" I didn't have an answer. It wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 little cuts. Comments, looks, silence, rejection. Until one day I looked at myself and saw something broken. But she helped me see that pain is learned, and so is healing. One day, she gave me a task. Stand in front of the mirror every morning and say something kind to yourself. It sounded ridiculous. The first time I tried, I couldn't do it. I looked at my face, at my round cheeks, at my thick thighs, and felt disgust. I cried instead. But I didn't stop. Day by day, word by word, I forced myself to say something, anything, nice. Sometimes it was just, "You're trying." Other days, "You deserve peace." Eventually, "You're not a mistake." That's when the shift began. It was slow, imperceptible at first, but something inside me was starting to breathe again. Healing doesn't look like a movie scene. There's no magical moment when everything suddenly makes sense. It's more like peeling layers off an onion. And sometimes it stings. After months of therapy, small routines began to transform me. I started walking in the mornings, not to lose weight, but to clear my mind. I created playlists with songs that made me feel powerful, songs sung by women who had also felt broken and chose to rise. I stopped following accounts on social media that made me feel like I wasn't enough. I replaced them with real women with cellulite, acne, stretch marks, soft bellies, big laughs. Women who looked like me. Women who loved like I wanted to love myself. One afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror again. This time, I let the towel fall. I looked, not with hate, not with disgust, with curiosity. There were stretch marks on my hips, faint but present, a soft belly, my arms, full and warm. I saw all of it, and for the first time, I didn't want to change it. I just wanted to understand it. That same week, I signed up for a women's support group recommended by my therapist. It was a circle of women of all ages, each one with a story. Some had survived abusive relationships. Others had overcome eating disorders. Some were still struggling. We cried together. We laughed. We held space for one another. It was the first time I heard someone say out loud, "I hated my body because I thought I had to earn love." And I knew exactly what she meant. During one session, we were asked to write a letter to our younger selves. Mine started like this. "I'm sorry they made you feel like you weren't enough. I'm sorry you thought you had to be smaller to be seen. But you are worthy, exactly as you are." After reading it aloud, I wept. Not because I was sad, but because I was finally free. I started to say no more often. No to toxic conversations. No to comparison. No to people who only loved me when I dimmed my light. And with every no, I said a louder yes to myself. I dyed my hair a color I had always wanted but was too scared to try. I took a solo trip. I danced without worrying how I looked. I bought clothes that made me feel beautiful, not invisible. For the first time in years, I felt alive. I wasn't healed completely, but I was healing, loudly, proudly, and unapologetically, and that was enough. It was a Tuesday, an ordinary day on the outside, but for me, it was a revolution. I had just gotten a job offer at a small but passionate creative agency. During the interview, I had spoken openly, without trying to shrink or polish myself into something I wasn't. When I got the call saying, "We want you," I realized it was the first time I was being chosen for who I actually was, not for who I pretended to be. That morning, I got dressed slowly. I chose a fitted skirt I once believed I wasn't allowed to wear, and a deep red blouse that made me feel like I could conquer the world. I looked in the mirror and smiled, not because I looked perfect, but because I looked like myself. On the way to the agency, I stopped for coffee. As I waited in line, I caught my reflection in the glass window. And there she was, the girl who used to cry in silence, now standing tall, unapologetic. Enough. Later that afternoon, I posted my first full-body photo on social media without filters, without hiding. The caption read, "This is me." And I'm finally okay with her. I was shaking when I hit publish. But what came next took me by surprise. The comments flooded in. Women I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me, saying, "Thank you for posting this. You have no idea how much I needed this. And I wish I had your courage." That's when I realized it was never just about me. My journey was mine, yes. But my story belonged to all of us. Every woman who had ever felt not enough. Every girl who had starved herself for approval. Every mother who still didn't look in the mirror. I began to share more. Stories, thoughts, memories. Not to gain followers, but to build bridges. I wasn't alone anymore. None of us were. One night, I received a message from a young woman. I almost deleted my photos today, until I saw yours. "Thank you for reminding me that I'm allowed to take up space," I cried. "Because that's what real beauty is. That's what self-love is. That's what strong women do. We rise above and lift others up with us." That day, I didn't just get a job. I got something much bigger. I chose myself. Completely. With love. Finally. I no longer ask mirrors for permission. For so long, I had measured my worth in reflections, comments, numbers on scales. But today, I look at myself differently. Not through society's lens, but through my own healing eyes. I still have bad days. Days when insecurities whisper old lies, but now I talk back. I remind myself of the woman I've become. A woman who is soft and strong, who carries scars and still shines, who found beauty in her own way, in her own body, in her own time. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a local women's event. The theme was self-love and real beauty. My heart raced at the thought. Me, speaking about beauty, but I accepted. I stood on that stage and told my story. Not the polished version, but the raw one. I shared about Daniel, about the towel-covered mirror, about the voice in therapy that helped me find my own. When I finished, there was silence. Then, applause. And then, women approached me, some with tears in their eyes, others with hugs that said, "Me too." That moment confirmed what I had always hoped. Our wounds, when spoken, become bridges. Our truth, when shared, becomes freedom. Our narrative emotional is not weakness, it's power. I still wear that red blouse sometimes, and I still take selfies. Not to prove anything, but because I genuinely like the person in the photo. I live my life now from a place of wholeness. I choose people who choose me back. I say yes to what nourishes me and no to what drains me. I surround myself with mujeres fortes, and I pass the mirror without flinching. Because today, when I look in the mirror, I see her. The girl who was once broken. The woman who rebuilt herself. The reflection I waited so long to love. To anyone, reading or watching this, if you've ever felt like you didn't fit the mold, know this. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are not broken. You are whole. And you are beautiful. Not despite your story, but because of it. If this story resonated with you, even a little, know that you're not alone. We all have mirrors we've feared, voices we've believed, and wounds we're still healing. But together, we grow stronger. Together, we reclaim our reflection. Have you ever struggled to love yourself as you are? Tell me your story in the comments. Let's make this space a circle of real beauty and support. And if this video touched your heart, don't forget to like, share it with another strong woman, and subscribe for more stories that reflect the truth of who we are.